All right, everyone. Welcome to another Authors at Google event. Today, we're very pleased to welcome a true icon in the Seattle restaurant scene, none other than Mr. Tom Douglas. He has over 13 different restaurants in the area, and he's actually published a wide variety of cookbooks as well. Today, he'll be talking to us on his life, his restaurants, entrepreneurship, but most specifically his latest book, which is the Dahlia Bakery Cookbook, which started out with a desire to staff excellent pastry in his restaurant, and now itself is a destination on the Seattle restaurant scene. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Tom to Google. Thanks.
Thanks. Thank you, Cliff. I'll start with, I just flew in from Manhattan. How many people are from Manhattan? How many people were happy not to be in Manhattan in the last week where I've been? Yeah, it is kind of crazy back there right now. Yesterday morning when I left for JFK from downtown, first of all, I had to bribe a cabbie to take me to JFK, $300, because he didn't want to go because he knew what the other side of it was, which was, by the time we got to the Triborough Bridge coming out of Midtown Manhattan, there was a traffic jam from the end of the bridge on the Manhattan side of the East River all the way to JFK. And it was taking some people 8 hours to get from JFK to downtown Manhattan. So it is quite an interesting time in that big, massive city. Our hotel was a block away from the dangling crane. Who saw the crane dangling? I was right there when it went over. We heard it. We were at 55th and 8th Avenue when it went over, and kind of freaky. And what else? It's just kind of an odd thing right now in Manhattan. Above 34th Street, it's like nothing ever happened, except that everyone's on the street because there's no subway. 5 million people a day take the subway there, so they're all on the streets, and it's a very interesting time. I feel thankful to be here as we flew out in our plane right over the New Jersey coast. You look down at Staten Island, Statue of Liberty, all that kind of area, and it's just kaput. So good to be a Googler today in Mountain View, California. What you're seeing on the internet is actually very true. We are going to talk about my book a bit, but I like restaurants. We can talk about the book as much as you like. Questions about pastry. I'm more interactive. I'm better interactive than I am just sitting up here giving you a speech. So if you have questions, jump in at any time. This is our fourth book. The rest have been more savory in nature, including the very first one, which was savors from our first three restaurants, and then from our home. And then I have a little book called I Love Crab Cakes, which is all about the crab cakes from the area where I grew up, was on the Chesapeake Bay, Newark, Delaware, so 45 minutes from the Chesapeake Bay. It's interesting to me that the change in restaurants to this day, and I think it's got a lot to do with you all, from the simplest things like getting a review of your restaurant. It used to have to be 3, 6 months, a year later, you hope that the local newspaper would give you a review. Now you do a little friends and family event the night before you open, and you've been reviewed by 20 people the next morning. That's been a big change in the restaurant business. I thought another interesting thing was during the recession that our customer counts never went down in our 13 restaurants. Not one time, not one quarter, not 1 minute did we have less customers than we had before the recession started. The customers that came all spent less, but the customer counts were there, and it really gave me pause to think about why that is. And this is the second area where you all come in, I think, which is that people are stuck behind their computer screens for so long every day. There's just this need to get out, to be with people, socialize, to have a place to go outside of your home where you'd be by yourself again or just cooking by yourself. And I think restaurants have become the hub of our communities. And if you look at the cafeterias here, I just walked through them with the chef team, and it's fascinating to see everyone just kind of revolve around the food here at Google. And I think it's happening in everyday restaurants at the same time. People are revolving around the table. The good news about that is that keeps chumps like me in business. The good news is that people are still talking over the dinner table, which I think is the best way for politics and things of that sort to happen. It's a good way for small business to survive as the Googles and the Amazons and the Microsofts, all kind of Apples take over the world in this business structure. It's a good way, it's one of the last bastions of small business to be out there surviving, being creative, and you see so many coffee shops and bars and restaurants of all sorts opening up still. It's a nice last bastion as bookstores go away. You know, in Paris, I was in Paris not too long ago, and it seemed like there was a bookstore on every block, and the leading line in the Parisian paper was, "Poor Paris, we are out of bookstores," because all the bookstores have closed. And there's still a bookstore in every block. You can just imagine what it used to be like in a literary town like Paris, how the retail has changed. So, my book is about family and friends. My book's about being the person at the water cooler to talk about the hot restaurant down the street, not about what you bought at Walmart yesterday. It's about not being the last person with the recipe card file, about taking the responsibility of teaching someone below you, whether it's generational or familial or whatever that is, a friend, a coworker, to extend your recipe card file past your own kitchen. It's about enjoying the treasure that cooking is, instead of not having time to cook. Cooking is a treasure. I say put your computer and put your TV in your kitchen and keep cooking, even if you have to watch The Voice while you're doing it. Go for it. There's nothing wrong with that. We found out this morning that we're number 14 on the New York Times bestseller list, which is very exciting. I don't know if that's just cookbooks or how to do books or hardcover books or whatever that is. I don't really give a shit. It's 14 on the New York Times bestseller list. We'll just leave it at that. One of my favorite recipes in here is called Schnecken. Anyone know what that is? Schnecken, which is a German word for kind of a cinnamon roll pull-apart. We've all had cinnamon pull-aparts, right? Where, you know, it's a classic. Maybe we all haven't. But sticky buns, right? Cinnamon, caramel, nuts, dough, yeast dough. And if there's a recipe that epitomizes why we have a baking book now in our life, it's that Grandma Douglas's Schnecken that I used to smell as a 10-year-old. And earlier, I'm sure, but I remember it from about then with coming downstairs. You could smell the yeast upstairs and in the bedroom, and Grandma was visiting from Chicago, and she'd have it, you know, the big sticky dough was rolled out on the table, and maybe inappropriate, but at 10 years old, when you touch that dough, you just know that it feels really good. At 18, you know why it felt good, because of the whole... If you know what I mean. If you don't, never mind. But at 10 years old, you just know it feels good and it smells good. At 18, you just know it really feels good. So she would have it all laid out, and then you come down, and she might or might not, you know, in her younger days, so in her 50s, 60s, you know, as far as I remember, she never let us touch it. She would always make it and just shoo you away from the table. She was not the nicest person in the whole world. But in her later years, when she realized that this was a tradition in our family and something that she needed to pass down, she would welcome you in to do parts of the process. And so the big thing, you know, maybe 2 feet wide, 18 inches this way, 2 feet this way. And she'd have the dough rolled out with her little red-handled rolling pin, and then she might let you spread the butter on, and then sprinkle the brown sugar and the nuts, and then you just roll it up into this pinwheel, this kind of squishy pinwheel. And then in the 9 by 13, not the 9 by 14 and not the 8 by 11, just had to be the right size pan. You would cut them into 1-inch rounds and then pop them in there, and they'd bake up. And then the dangerous part would happen when they pulled it out of the oven and the hot caramel was bubbling, and then you'd have to turn it over, and everyone would have to clear out while Grandma did this. Of course, she's this tall and her arms are this long, you know, but she would do it on her homemade aluminum trays. That was kind of a big thing. She was a crafty person. And so she did these hammered aluminum. Does anyone remember? You can see them in like used stores now. Like anyway, she had a bunch of those, and we had a bunch. If she had them, we had them. And so turn it out onto that, and then it was the good time to use my girth. I have 6 sisters and a brother, and I've always been the biggest person in the family. I was born 125 pounds. I know that you probably don't believe that, but that's actually true. And I was the largest baby in the state of Delaware. I know, just kidding. But at that time, at 10 years old, I was by far the largest child in our house. Even my brother, who was 6 years older than me, was not larger than me. And so that's when you just kind of do the block and tackle. You just move over and you get the pieces that you want, because everyone had their favorite corner, the center, the gooey center, the crispy corner, whatever. And then when you go for the seconds, you go for what's left. And it doesn't really matter at that point, because you're in heaven with your sticky buns. But that's kind of what this book is all about, is that recipes like that are familial. They've been passed down. They are doable, approachable. They are, in a sense, they're obligations to my daughter, who's 22 now, who has been growing up cooking with me for the last 15 years in our home kitchen. They're an obligation to her to get in the kitchen and to continue the process of not letting the recipe card file stop with me. Tons of different stuff in there. So I'm just going to maybe open it for questions. We can talk about Seattle. We can talk about restaurants. I love restaurants. I eat in one of mine and somebody else's every day. I was in Manhattan 2 weeks ago for another event, and I was there for almost a week, and we ate in 37 restaurants in 5 days because that's what I do. I love restaurants. I was in Manhattan this time for almost 6 days or so, and I couldn't even eat in half of that many. They weren't open. Everyone was closed except for hotel restaurants, and then you were on very limited menus because they only had the cooks that they could keep in the rooms upstairs. And then as soon as the power went out in southern Manhattan on the tip, they kicked all the cooks and people out of their rooms because then they could sell out the rooms. Every hotel room in Manhattan is booked right now because people don't have power. So we can talk about Manhattan and the floods, being in the middle of a hurricane. We can talk about anything you like. So I'm going to open it up. Somebody just start us off.
If anyone wants to ask questions, ask for a mic.
We can talk about entrepreneurial. Does anyone want to open a restaurant? Yes, do you? I have a funny story. You guys all might know who Amazon is, right? They're expanding rapidly in the city of Seattle, largest urban campus in the world. I have 3 restaurants, almost 3 restaurants in the middle of their campus, and I have 2 just a block outside of the campus in South Lake Union of Seattle. And we had this old building. It was 20,000 square foot. And I couldn't decide whether to do 1, 2, or 3 restaurants in there. I didn't want to do 1 because it was too big. But it's 2 levels, so I decided to do 3 restaurants, 1 on the bottom, 1 upstairs, and then 1 little one just for the Amazonians in the back, a little Tibetan dumpling bar, because I had a Tibetan chef on staff for the last 17 years. So I got hold of I asked a guy who was a group leader at Amazon for his list of people that reported to him if I could do a little survey so I could find out what the Amazonians wanted next to their offices. And talk about different business cultures. You guys seem like you might have a pretty strong culture around here. Something tells me yellow bikes and stuff, volleyball. So I wrote a note to all 600 of these folks, and I said, if you could put any restaurant, it's Tom Douglas, I'm well known in Seattle, if you can put any restaurant right next to if you could own any restaurant, cost is no object, doesn't cost you a dime, you want your favorite restaurant right next to your office, what would it be? And I got 150 responses. 72% said exactly the same thing, which is, I thought, an incredible number to have the similar response out of all the possibilities of restaurants. Anybody here want to take a gander? You say you want to open what would you open? If you could open a restaurant right next to your office, have it be your favorite place, all your friends would come, what would it be? Seafood of any sort. You just like seafood. So is that sushi? Is that grilled salmon? Yeah. Right. Delicious. Sounds great. Anybody else? Is that a family recipe? Is that a family tradition? So you'd bring your family into it. You're passionate about. Okay. There you go. It's right in here. All right. Anybody else want to jump in? What would you build right next to your office?
So speaking of Manhattan, I would say the Halal cart down at 53rd and 6th.
A la carte?
No, halal chicken cart.
Oh, the halal carts, one of those little quick skewered jobs.
Yes.
With the heavy fried rice. Oddly enough, they were not out either. That was another odd thing about Manhattan during the storm was they just disappeared. They started showing up yesterday, but so halal carts, so chicken, skewers. Anybody else? Nobody else here wants to? Look at all the white chef coats in the back. Yes, sir.
Franklin's Barbecue.
Franklin's Barbecue. What do you like about it?
Everything on the tray.
So good smoky brisket, beans, mac and cheese, cornbread. Meat.
Now, the funny thing is I eat meat about once a week, but that would be my last meal.
That would be it.
Yeah.
And where is Franklin's?
Austin, Texas.
Ah. So I go to the Salt Lick just south in Lockhart in the barbecue belt.
That would be a bad
Oh. Have you been to Smith's?
What's Smith's?
Smith's, it's got the black crusted brisket down in,
That's everywhere.
yeah, but this is,
Are you talking
trust-
Smitty's?
Smitty's down, it's near Lockhart, but it's not in the town of Lockhart.
Smitty's is in Lockhart.
Maybe it's Smitty's.
Then there's
Krutz is a more German, I'm not a big fan of Krutz Market.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's not my favorite.
okay. I always thought Salt Lick was slightly German too.
It is slightly, but to me, it's a little bit more Texan. It does, Krutz is, anyway. So barbecue is, getting back to our point, we don't want to
Yeah.
Okay, so anybody, so here's my point. Here's what I was trying to get at with my Amazon question. 72% of 150 people that responded to me said, well, really, I just want cheap. You could open anything in the world right next to your office. All they worried about was the price of it. And that is definitely an Amazon culture. And if you go to their offices, you know, their desks are made out of old wood doors and on sawhorses and things like that. It's fascinating to me, the culture. I bet if I did the same thing anonymously here, I bet it would be a very different answer, because this place seems much more food-oriented. Kind of fun. Yes, sir.
Maybe following up on that, what do you think about the food truck culture? And are they, do you feel threatened by that? Is it unfair competition?
Is it unfair? I mean, if you were to look at the apples to apples, yeah, it's a little unfair. Do I feel threatened? No. What's the upside to the truck? There's really not a lot of upside. You can do as many meals as you can do a day out of it. And so from a financial perspective, would I ever do a truck personally? There's just not enough in it. Passionate, young person's job, absolutely. Great place to try a concept, absolutely. Same as a farmer's market, though. I think they're interesting and fun. You know, the new Amazon, they just announced 3 million more square feet in downtown Seattle, and they're building a truck rodeo spot in the middle of the campus. They really like it. Those workers really like it. Why? It's cheap. It's really cheap. So no, I don't feel threatened, but it is what it is. In Portland right now, there's a lot of food trucks for sale. You know, it's gone over the tipping point of viability in Portland. And so that's where we just bought ours. We're moving our little Tibetan dumpling business into a food truck. But only because my Tibetan chef, who's 65, could not handle the business at her other place. So I'm moving her out of there. I never wanted to open outside of Seattle until my kid was grown. Now she's grown, so maybe we'd think about that. We're actually talking with a company in South Korea right now for serious pie, 50 serious pies, in Paris, in London, in Milan. We're kind of in negotiations right now about serious pie. What do we want to do with it? 6 months after we were open, I was offered $5 million for serious pie, the concept, and for 300 units in North America, and I had to be at the opening of every unit. That was my only responsibility other than the recipes. And it just didn't feel right. It just didn't feel good. Today, 7 years later, would I do it? I would think about it more seriously. But Serious Pie is just a terrific little organic pizzeria. How many people have been to Serious Pie? Couple? It's Serious Pie is what happens when a fine dining chef thinks about pizza. And we put our same values into pizza that we put into, say, at the Dahlia Lounge, our kind of flagship fanciest restaurant. When we put those same values onto a pizza, things change. You expect different end results. And I don't mean that in a, wow, my pie's better than your pie way. It's just changed. The things that we wouldn't accept went away. Like by putting cheese on a pizza, when you put it into the oven and then baking it, you get a different product when it comes out. You don't get cheese anymore. You get the whey and the milk product, and you get a separation of the fat out of the cheese. You end up with two different things. That's why when you order a to-go pizza and you get it at your house, it comes with that oil slick on the top. What is that? That's your cheese that has been overcooked, and the fat and the whey is separated. And that's what ends up being, because cheese is fat. It's going to turn greasy when you break it. What happens when you make mayonnaise and it separates? Separate the egg and the mustard and the lemon juice from the fat. It separates, and you wouldn't want to eat just the greasy part of the mayonnaise, just the fat part. You want to eat the combination, the whipped together, the emulsified fat. So in Serious Pie, we worked on the crust for 3 months and kept working on it, because we started with the assumptions that it has to be similar to what we know. And then as we got into it more and more, we realized that it has to be opposite of what we know if it's going to be a game changer. Why would I open a pizzeria if it wasn't a game changer? I'm not in it for the money. I'm in it for the passion. I like to make money, but it's not my end. My end game is to make as good a pie as I can make, something that makes me happy. And so 3 months later, we had this crust, started with high gluten flour. All the other pizzerias, all these Neapolitan style pizzas that cook at 800 degrees, 850 for a minute and a half with 00 flour, totally opposite. Very low gluten, very high gluten in our flour. We have a much more structured dough. It takes 3 days to make. When we run out of dough tonight, we can't make any more dough. It's 3 days for that dough to happen. So we just closed the restaurant. And it boils up, the black boils on it happen beautifully. It's probably the only thing we changed about the pie, because I love the black boils on a crust. And my customers were sending it back before they would even try it. They said, hey, this is burnt, and we were having this issue. And finally I gave a little bit and sent it out dark brown. But I love the black boils, that crusty, black, burnt flavor. Simple things like extra virgin olive oil. We use the best cheeses in the world and less of them, and then we treat them correctly. How many people would put herbs on the pizza after it comes out of the oven? Herbs lose 90% of their flavor if they're cooked. If you put them on after and let the residual heat of the pie bring out the fragrance of those herbs, you have a much different pizza experience. And so that's what we do. We cheese and herb afterwards. We put fresh extra virgin olive oil on afterwards so they get that good olivey flavor. And then we cook at 625 degrees for 6.5 to 7 minutes. So we had a real structured crust already. And then that slow bake cooks it all the way through compared to the minute and a half at 850. So it's just a pie that we thought about. And that's what happens when you think about something and you throw away all the rules. And it sounds like maybe that happens around here once in a while too.
So, Tom, I had a quick question too. You've worked with the same co-author for many of your cookbooks.
Shelley,
this one
yes.
Specifically. Could you describe how that collaboration process works and how you go about writing your books?
Sure. So Shelley Lance is my co-author. She was a sauté cook for me at a restaurant before I owned my own places. So we've worked together now for 27 years, I want to say. And she's crotchety. She is a whiner. And so her on a busy night on the line just was not the best thing ever. And so we always looked for jobs to get Shelley off the line because she had the best palate in the company. And I didn't want to lose her sense of food. Just very, very organic, natural, passionate sense for food. And so we finally moved her into the baking, and then she started doing the baking. And then once we got to be multiple units, once we got to be 3 restaurants, she became our quality control person. So her job was to eat in each of the restaurants every week and then write a report for me, because at that point I was starting to travel more. And now she can't even keep up with that now that we have 13 places. She is just our blog editor and our author. And she is really persnickety. Food and Wine magazine in their review called it the best tested recipes they'd ever come across. Because Shelley does that. Every recipe is tested 5 times, 3 by chefs, 2 by home cooks, and Shelley is the coordinator of all of that. So it is, when you go to make the effort to cook, it's going to come out the way we tell you it's going to come out. So, Cliff, that is why, wherever you went to. Yes? So the question is, how long does it take to write a cookbook?
From start to finish.
From start to finish. Well, if you're as ADD as me, it takes longer. If I were to just sit down and do it, I could do it in less than a month. Not all the testing and not all that part, but writing the book, I could do it in no time. But doing it on airplanes and weekends and all the times that you happen to be in the mood to write the right part of the book, just the head notes and the introduction and things of that sort, it takes me a long time. So we worked on this book for almost 2 years. And I would say it's still old school publishing. Things are changing. I'm surprised that my publisher took that long, honestly. When I did my first book, it was a 2.5-year process. Now it's a 2-year process. I would have thought they'd be faster. The good news is that it's a really good book. It came out nice. Ed Anderson, a San Francisco photographer, did the photographs. It's printed in country, which makes it easier for reprints and for all of those kind of things. That's a big challenge, to not spend 3 months on a boat coming from someplace else. Yeah. So that's been nice compared to my other books. It's already in its second printing. It's been out for a week. My first book is in its 14th printing. So, I mean, one of the things I'm most proud about is our books work, and that takes extra time, and that takes dollars. To make a recipe 5 times and pay 5 different chefs to do it, and then to do it again a 6th time for a photograph, we spend a lot of money to make sure that everything is good. So. Yes,
I
sir.
wanted to touch more on what you said, that how Americans are having this like attachment to restaurants. We're like using it as a hub of socializing. Have you seen that to be the case in other countries? I've been told that other countries like don't go to restaurants as much as we do. I wanted to get your perspective on that.
Well, I think every country goes to restaurants. I would, if you go to Hong Kong, the restaurants are packed. You know, it's hard to break out which is tourism, which is not. Same in San Francisco. You know, San Francisco gets over 40 million tourists a year. Seattle gets 10. You know, it's hard to say who gets what. I mean, if you took tourism out of San Francisco, you'd have half the number of restaurants to choose from. It's an important part of giving you the depth and breadth of restaurants that you have. In other countries, having just spent 5 weeks in Paris last October, you know, you can put dog shit on a plate. There are so many people there looking for cuisine traditionnelle that, and there's not a Parisian cooking it. There's a lot of North Africans cooking it, just like there's a lot of Latinos in our kitchens. They're not connected to the food in the same way. There's certainly terrific cooks, but I don't know how it is down here, but in our kitchens, when one of our Latino cooks wants to eat, he or she would definitely rather eat off of their own staff meal than any of our menus. And that's what you find in Italy and like in Tuscany or areas like that. You go to 10 restaurants in Florence, 9 of them have exactly the same menu. So they eat out, but if you ask a Parisian today, where do you want to go for dinner tonight, they go out for French food. They don't go out, they say, oh, I feel like Vietnamese tonight, or I feel like Chinese, or I feel like Mexican food tonight. They don't think that way. That's a uniquely American thing, and I'm thankful for it. My food definitely reflects that. It sure seems like the restaurants and cafes are busy everywhere. London, you could hardly get into a restaurant. Paris, the same way. I went thinking that no reservations and no stars, and the only thing I had to change was no reservations. I had to get reservations, or else you eat at the worst of the worst restaurants in Paris. In Milan, some of the best food going, but got to have a reservation, but it's very much Milanese food. There's a reason for that. People, you know, they live on tourism, and when people get there, they don't want to eat Chinese in Italy, right? Whereas in America, we're a melting pot. We have some of the best Chinese restaurants in the world right here in this country. So. Any other thoughts about restaurants? Yes? Oh, okay. Oh, there you are.
How do you stay, or maybe you don't, how do you stay on top of maybe food trends and, I don't know, embrace them, and then kind of make sure
that we're part of the conversation.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah,
without getting kind of coming in too late.
Well, it's probably the same as you do. You look around, and I eat around everywhere to make sure that what we're doing is current and now and delicious. And I got to say, the left coast of this country is the trendsetter. When you look at what's happening in San Francisco and Seattle and Portland and Vancouver, BC and LA, there's just no doubt that the best food is happening on this side of the country. You look in London and Paris, some of the best restaurants in Paris are being run by American chefs. Whether it's Spring or Verjus, it's not just American chefs, but it's French chefs that have been on the road through the Americas. It's fascinating. This country is so willing to accept change and growth, unlike other cultures in the food world, that it's probably why Google does what it does. You know, we're so willing to accept the next new thing, and that's harder for other countries that are steeped in tradition than a young country like this one, a melting pot like this one. I think the trends really are laying themselves. I know just Amazon alone in my neighborhood in Seattle has 2,000 Indians working there, and we have virtually no modern Indian restaurant in the city. Nothing that I would be proud to say, this is a great Indian restaurant, you should check this out. It's just the way it is. So there's no doubt that modern Indian is going to be the next wave of food. And we're already there's one in Vancouver that I love called Vidges, and we're getting a second, the new offshoot of Vidges is happening in Seattle in Lake Union in 2 weeks. So that's what I'm looking for. And then I'm looking to break India down, like China got broken down, the Sichuan and Hunan and Canton. And as soon as India gets broken down, I think that's going to be very interesting, not just southern and northern, but regional aspects of Indian food and Asia in general.
typically the chefs that I watch on TV, like Gordon Ramsay, they have a signature dish. And I was wondering, like, what
His
would
signature
be
dish is
your...
"fuck you."
Really?
That's all he says, isn't it? I mean, every other word's a bleep.
I think I chose a bad example.
Yeah.
But
would you
let's
ever
say-
work at a restaurant if that's what you thought that they were
No,
like?
I wouldn't.
No.
No.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, but, what would be a dish that you would like to be associated with the most? Like, one of your dishes?
Of my dishes, it's probably with my oldest restaurant, which is the Dahlia Lounge, and we do this slow roasted duck there that gets marinated for 2 days and then 5 hours slow roasted over a wood fire. And it just is beautifully rendered and gets to a fall off the bone texture, which I don't think you see much in duck these days. Everywhere you go, it's either a confit leg and a sliced rare breast, or it's just the rare breast. Well, I like a whole roasted duck, just like I like a fall off the bone chicken. And we do it there. That it's got a kind of a, we call it a diki rub or Chinese 12 spice or some. It's got this kind of aromatic rub on it, and then when we pull that off, we let them cool, and they're just these lacquered brown color from the rub and the wood smoke, and then we break them down into a thigh leg piece and a breast piece, and then when you come to the restaurant, you order it. We take those and we put them skin side down on a sizzle platter, and just render that skin to that. It looks black in the dining room because the dining room is naturally darker than the kitchen. But it's just this caramelized, toasty brown, like the outside of a toasted almond, that has the skin still on it, or it's dark like that. And it is glorious. And we'll serve it with a little quick stir-fried gailan, Chinese broccoli, or a wide, fresh rice noodle made in Chinatown in our city, and Chuchong Noodle Company. And I love that kind of thing.
What do you think of the technological advances of cooking, like using dry ice and other things that Myhrvold is kind of exploring?
Yeah, I think it's all perfectly interesting. It's the young chefs are really enamored with it, which I think anything that gets them engaged is great by me. In the Modernist Cuisine, do you know what he's talking about? The book Modernist Cuisine, where it talks about not just the new cooking styles, but also it explains cooking in general, from what happens in a hot wok to what happens on your charcoal grill. How is that affecting the meat or fish that you put right on top of it, and the caramelization process, and all of those sorts of things. I think it's interesting. Right now, Williams-Sonoma, Sur La Table, they all have home sous vide machines that you can buy and take home and do your own process. But sous vide's been around for 60 years. That's nothing new. I was using sous vide on Northwest Airlines 15, 20 years ago. So I love that it explains what's going on in your kitchen. They cut a microwave in half to show you exactly what it is. I've been to the lab. I had my 42-course dinner in the lab. I got to tell you, it's not all that. It's certainly not more delicious. It's just more. It's interesting. It's centrifuges and liquid nitrogen. And I had what he called the perfect ribs. I think in the new home version of Modernist Cuisine, they call it perfect ribs, where you drop them into a nitrogen container and freeze them rock hard, just the outside. Just freeze the skin rock hard on the outside, so it's like 5 seconds in nitrogen and then 10 seconds in a deep fryer. Because all he wants to do is not change the structure of the meat on the inside with either manipulation. So he wants that perfectly smoky rib on the inside. But by freezing the outside first, it takes that much longer in the fryer to heat the inside. And so when you do the deep frying, it only changes the skin texture, which gives you a crisp skin. And the inside stays exactly the same because it was so cold to begin with when I went in the fryer. So those are the kind of thoughtful things that come out of that. I'm all for it. At the end of the day, food manipulation is just that, whether you're doing it with nitrogen or whether you're doing it on a charcoal grill. You are manipulating an end product, right? So at the beginning of the day, so that's at the end of the day. At the beginning of the day, what's important? What kind of salmon is it? Where did it come from? How was it caught? Is it sustainably caught? So are you leaving fish for the next generation? So then, how was it caught? Was it bled right after it was brought onto the boat? Was it belly packed in ice? Was it taken to shore on a day boat rather than sitting out on a trawler for the 3 or 4 days? Was it then flown to your restaurant? When you touch it, does it have bright eyes and bright scales? Does when you run your finger across the flesh, does the flesh come off on your finger, or does it stay right on the fish where it should be, which suggests that it's only been out of the water a day or two? What's important for a young chef is to know those details. Because if you don't start with a great product, I don't care what you do at the end of the day, you're going to have shitty fish. Just plain and simple. So you have to have your basics down to understand what a good fish is to begin with and to buy the best products. And then, as I tell my chefs, is get out of the way, don't screw it up. You know, it's like, what can you do to a 25-pound beautiful king salmon from the Copper River? What can you do that's going to be better than that? You can't. You can dry it. Yeah, you can. I mean, you know what I'm saying? All you can do is try to get out of the way and let that fish be everything it can be. And to put it into a sous vide and to all this stuff, infuse it with herbs and all those kind of things, you have to have a pretty big ego to think that you're going to do something better than that fish is already showing. Or then that fish could be done in a $10 Chinese bamboo steamer with a little bit of, you know, green onion and a little bit of garlic or a fresh shred of ginger. You know, what can you do that's better than that? I'm sorry, you can't. Yes?
Okay, I have a couple questions. One is, what is your favorite of your restaurants that you have?
My favorite is only because it's where my office is, which is where the Palace Kitchen is, and it also serves full dinner until 1 a.m. And I'm a late eater. We have restaurants that go till midnight, and we have catering that goes often late. We have concessions at the local theaters that go late. And I love just bringing my team back and eating late dinner at the Palace Kitchen.
And then my other question was, when I moved down here a year ago, there was this big craze in Seattle about the menuless restaurants where you just tell them what you're allergic to, and then they just provide food. Have you thought about doing a concept like that?
No. No, I'm not about the chef. I'm about you, the customer. And maybe that's totally what you're interested in. But when I go to a restaurant, I like a menu. When the chefs, I just ate in New York, and I happened to run into some of my favorite chefs. I ran into John George von Richten at John George. I ran into Mario Batali at Babbo, Todd English at Todd English Food Halls. I mean, it was crazy. I ran into Danielle at Danielle Cafe Balud. I know all these. These are my peers. I want to see what they're doing. I don't want to just walk in and have whoever they have in the kitchen do what they do. I want a menu. I want to mix and match. I might order 4 entrees. You know, it's like, that's what I do. So no, I'm more about being the customer and looking for that great experience.
Hi, Giada De Laurentiis is one of my favorite Food Network personalities.
For other reasons, probably.
I love the way she says spaghetti.
Yeah, exactly.
But I was wondering if you could talk about the episode when she tried your donuts and kind of what that interaction was like.
Sure. Well, just to go back a couple of years from that, I was doing a cover shot for Thanksgiving for Food and Wine magazine. Maybe we were on the cover maybe 7 or 8 years ago now. And they sent a crew out from New York. And of course, I keep all sorts of china at my house. I keep every set of china for each of my restaurants so that when I'm trying something at home, I can see what it looks like on a plate. That's where it would be served. And then I have 15 sets of china of my own at my home. So we have 30 sets of china at our house. And so I'm getting these calls and platters from all over the world. I've got lots of stuff. If you want to see my kitchen, as a matter of fact, Something Kitchen, Fine Cooking magazine, just did an online version of an exploration of our kitchen. And it's in the magazine too, but the online is a more narrated version of our home kitchen. But anyway, so Food and Wine calls, will you do this? Of course I'll do it. Cover of Food and Wine magazine? Sure. So then they sent out their team. Well, the assistant food stylist on that particular shoot was Giada De Laurentiis, before she got famous. And you know, of course, who she's family of. Dino De Laurentiis, the famous Hollywood movie producer, that's her grandfather. And a lot of people don't remember, but he tried to do a big food thing in New York called the Dino De Laurentiis Food Show. And it was based on, have you ever been to Harrods in London, in the food thing in the basement, or Takashimaya in Tokyo with the big food center in the basement? It was based on that in Manhattan. You've been to Italy now in New York? Anybody been to Italy? Where you have that kind of food interspersed with shopping, or to Peck in Milan. Really incredible mix of food and restaurant and cafe. And he went 9 months, the whole place went under in Manhattan, her grandfather. So anyway, she was the assistant food stylist. Then she went on to get her own little show. And between the teeth and the cleavage, she is just kicked. And that little, what did you say, spaghetti? Yeah, exactly, yeah. She has killed it. So she called me, her producer called me and said, can Giada come in? And we certainly, absolutely. And that was pretty much it. We sat and chatted for a bit on camera, and I don't think I made the camera at all. I have a face made for radio, as they like to say. And I don't think I was in that shot at all on TV. And she just said it. And you know, Tyler Florence said the same about Serious Pie, and that was a huge, they keep replaying that too. And you know, I was on Iron Chef. I was up against Morimoto on Iron Chef, and they keep replaying that also, which is kind of interesting. Whenever they say it's just okay to be on the show, it's not better to win or lose, it's better to win. Because every time they show it, like it's been on 100 times, I'm 100-0 every time I win. It's quite fantastic. And every time they show Giada or Tyler, the restaurants win again. We can just feel the punch the next morning of people that have seen it the night before. So it's kind of interesting that way.
What's your comfort food, or what would you want in the center of near you? The question you asked us.
Boy. You know, what's so fun now is to have my daughter cook for us. That's pretty comforting to watch her stroll about the kitchen. And she still thinks I'm an okay dad. I think that's pretty cool. My comfort food, I mean, I think something like orecchiette with broccoli rabe and Italian sausage. I could eat that once a week at least. I love that kind of stewy kind of thing. That same salmon that I talked about, I take a bamboo steamer, I take a plate with a well, put my 2 pieces of fish when my wife and I are eating, and I grate fresh ginger, squeeze a little bit of the ginger juice, little soy sauce, a little pat of butter, maybe if I have it, a couple slivers of green onion, a little sake or white wine. And then my next level up, those steamers are layered, right? So next level up, I'll put a little fresh baby bok choy. And then in my rice cooker, I have rice with a 1 pod of star anise in there. And so I have this beautiful kind of fragrant steamed rice, this perfectly steamed, gorgeous piece of fish, and a hot, like al dente broccoli rabe. I just think that's comfort. So if I was cooking for myself, that's my comfort food. If my wife's cooking, I like the sausage and rabe. She's Italian-Greek.
Hi, do you have any favorite restaurants in San Francisco?
Favorite restaurants in San Francisco? Of course I do. I'm part owner of a restaurant in San Francisco. Has anyone been to Prospect? Yeah? What did you think? Don't say anything bad. Yeah, I liked it. That's sort of okay. You live above it and you haven't been there? You cheap son of a bitch. What do you... I'm trying to make a living here.
I'd like to go to a nice restaurant, but I'm like, I liberate. I don't know. I'm just putting it off. Maybe I could go.
I guess. So Prospect is a sister restaurant to Boulevard, and I've been many-year friends with Nancy Oakes, who owns Boulevard, and they were going to start a new restaurant group down here, and I don't even know the name of it. I invested so long ago, and I've invested in a ton of restaurants. I never get a dime back, and so here I'm part owner of Prospect. I kind of had visions at some point that maybe Serious Pie would come down here and they would run it. That's an interesting angle to me. Do it. But you know, like, what's your favorite pizza down here? Like A16 or something like that, right? That's a very different pie, right? That's more the Neapolitan style pie. And I'm always curious if my pie will go well someplace else because it's so different. Anywhere. First potato pizza I ever had, the potato and rosemary pizza, was in Rome. And I was just smitten by it. It was so delicious. But in Rome, the crusts are very thick. It's a lot of the pizzerias in Rome, they're kind of rolled out into sheet pans and more like a focaccia base. And then the toppings right on there. So finally, someone in a chef coat speaking up, representing.
I'm off shift, so
You're off shift. Did I scare everyone else away, or did they have to go back to work?
They had to go back to work.
Okay.
I start super early. I want to own my own bakery. I'm in the very beginning stages right now. I think this is working. And what would you say is your best advice? I mean, the first few things you think of when you're talking to someone who wants to start a bakery.
So have you worked in other bakeries?
Yeah, I've been in the industry for almost 9 years now.
And have you worked in some independent bakeries? So you know the pitfalls of doing everything yourself? And,
Yes, yeah.
Because sometimes people forget about, you have to do the books and you have to do the hiring. And
that's my
you can't
hardest
just
part right
make
now.
cookies, right?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
You have to get all that other stuff done.
Yeah.
Have you been in bakeries that you like?
Absolutely. There's lots in the city that I love. Susie Cakes. I kind of want to go that direction of, you know, pies and you know, cookies and bars and still cupcakes, but not, you know, everyone's cupcakes right now, and I don't want to only do that.
Right. I went to, this morning, I went to Craftsman and Wolves. Have you been there yet?
No.
On Valencia.
Okay.
It's down near where Tartine is.
Oh, okay.
And that's much more of a Pierre Hermé style bakery out of Paris. Very chic-y, a little bit laundry-ish without the drama.
Yeah.
But the same kind of looking pastries.
Cool.
Interesting to try. I'd be curious if they make it. It's a hard sell in this town to sell $7, $8, $10 desserts.
Yeah.
You know, this big.
Yeah.
In a place where you don't really have any seating, and so I'll be curious how that goes. What else would I say? You know your neighborhood, know your customer, know what you want, and then be willing to make the adjustments once you get open to let your ego get out of the way and realize that if these folks don't walk through your front door, you're screwed. And they might once, but they have to walk through more than one time, right? You have to learn a customer service that is inviting and makes them want to come back. Okay. And that's the number one thing. So many chefs go in, they want to open their own place because they want to cook their food. Yeah. Well, screw you. Your food is their food. That's who you owe it to. And if they don't come back and vote for you with their dollars, you're done. And that's why you see the restaurant churn so often, right? Because 75% of restaurants go out of business through employee theft. And the other 25% go out of business because the chefs are stupid and they're egomaniacs and they can't get their act together. They have their tunnel vision on what they do rather than business as a bigger picture. Employee theft, you've probably all benefited from it. When's the last time you went to a restaurant where you knew the bartender, he handed you a drink, didn't charge you? It's employee theft. I'm sure he didn't go to the till and pay for it himself. I mean, it's nice, it's very, you know, we call it customer service sometimes, but that's employee theft, and it happens through the back door and it happens through the front door. And it is something that you can't really stop, you just have to kind of mitigate the damage from it. So, but that's something to think about building into your pricing structure. And in bakeries, it's all about waste. What do you do with those cookies you didn't sell today, right? Yeah. There's a lot of, you have to, if you make 20 cookies, you can't think, if you made 24 cookies, say, out of a recipe, and you think how to price those cookies, it's not just the ingredients of the cost of the dough or the labor that it takes you to make the 24 cookies. It's, at the end of the day, how many did you have to throw away? So if you had to throw away 6 of the 24, you have to build the cost of those 6 back into your first 18 so that you know what you should properly be charging for the cookie. Because unless you build in that number, your numbers aren't going to work, right? So be thinking about those things. And always you can email me. I'm tom@tomdouglas.com. And I really believe in mentorship, and I'm happy to share any sort of numbers or anything like that. So,
one final question then. How much of your cuisine and your business do you think just strictly comes out of Seattle? Do you think you'd had a different path if you started in Miami or another Chicago or another cultural center? And what do you see as really next for your empire?
My empire is kind of weird. I'm the chef for Amtrak Railroad. Probably didn't know that. I'm the chef for Macy's Corporation, one of 15 of us on the Culinary Council at Macy's. I'm the chef for Columbia Crest Winery, one of the second largest winery in America. So getting back to how do you make your business, you have to have these little things to kind of intertwine to help you pay the bills. Books help you get on TV and get into Google and the Microsoft and the Starbucks campuses. And so they get to spread your message. Where we end up, I have no idea. We're starting a new grocery line called Home Remedy right now, which may or may not show up depending on how well it sells in Seattle in your Draeger's markets and your local grocery stores, who knows. It's time to explore. I've been doing the restaurant thing for 25 years. It's time to try a couple of new things, and so we're really researching that right now.
All right. So
thank you all for coming and spending some of your afternoon with me. I appreciate it. Where do they sign up for books?
So they're forthcoming, but first of all, we want to thank you for coming to Google. So thank you very much, Tom.
Thank you.